We're going to work 6:30.
Yes, okay. All right. I love that. All right. Well, I may come by in the morning then. That'd be all right. I won't stay. Just drop something off. You know I'm not going to hinder them from working. Y'all did a great job on the lock post.
Yes, he did.
Oh, yes.
Talk about down the road.
It's
That's great.
a massive difference. Yeah, it was perfect.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, we're going to call this meeting to order. If you all will join me in a moment of silence, keeping in mind those impacted by the storms in Tennessee. All right, thank you. If you'll join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ian, we're going to change things up a little bit this evening. So before we delve into the agenda, I want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank Mayor Pro Tem Bob Davey for his years of dedicated service. Bob's service dates back to 1984, when he, along with Bill Moore, Charles Bagwell, and Roy Whitaker, joined forces to establish organized baseball in Fletcher. They were ultimately successful, building baseball fields in Fletcher, and the first organized games were played in 1987. And as time progressed, Bob and others played a crucial role in the incorporation of our wonderful town that we know and love today. Bob went on to serve on the Parks and Rec Board between 1991 and 2004. And on May 10, 2004, Bob was appointed to the Town Council, where he has served and will continue to do so until the end of this month. Bob's thoughtfulness, wisdom, and altruism are apparent, making him a well-respected servant not only in Fletcher, but throughout our entire state. And this became particularly evident this summer with the assistance of Kathy Davey, Bob's wife, Mark Bieberdorf, our town manager, Heather Taylor, our assistant town manager, and former Representative Chuck McGrady. They all worked together to ensure that Bob received the recognition he deserves. So this summer, we began the process to see if we can get Bob awarded the Order of the Longleaf Pine. And since 1963, North Carolina's governors have reserved their highest honor, the Order of the Longleaf Pine Award, for persons who have made significant contributions to their state and their communities through exemplary service and exceptional accomplishments. And after a very long waiting period, we're notified that Bob will be awarded the Order of the Longleaf Pine, and we have it here this evening, Bob, to present to you, and we all congratulate you. Have the right people. It's the highest honor somebody can receive in North Carolina.
That's awesome.
And again, we thank you for your years of service, Bob. It was well deserved. All righty. Moving on to public comment, we have one individual signed up, Mr. Brandon Olson. And just say your name, your address, and then your 3 minutes will begin.
Brandon Olson, 33 Stony Brook Court. I can't put it any better than the Mayor did. He has prepared, written down, you received that award. Order of the Longleaf Pine. But from me personally, thank you for your years of service, and on behalf of all the people in the town of Fletcher, and everybody who benefits from the good work you've done for these almost 30 years. That's almost 40 years, goodness gracious. Councilman Davey, public service, you're a great example, you've been a great mentor. Can't thank you enough, and town knows you have a great debt of gratitude. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
token of our appreciation,
Is there anybody else that would like to speak during public comment?
Comment?
Public comment?
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
I heard this time. I got the history, trash bin and history here for Calvary Episcopal Church.
Okay, well, before you get started in public comment, just say your name and your address, and then you have 3 minutes when the clerk's ready, she'll start the clock.
Christopher Lance, 232 Alliance Page Road, right the road here. Right across from Calvary Episcopal Church. I seen the amendment about y'all not having affiliation with a party or something.
Right, yeah, we're not partisan.
You're not gonna have like a D or R beside your name
During elections, no.
for here. I guess that figures, Chairman Blakely, yeah. What was my other question? Shoot, I came in a rush here from work, man. Mr. Bigelow, yeah. How you doing with that?
Good.
I can't think of it right now. Something else. Oh, I liked your picture in the paper about Calvary. You a member up there at Calvary Episcopal Church?
I am not.
Okay, right, okay. All right, thank you. Yeah.
All righty, we thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else that would like to speak during public comment? All righty.
I know what it was. Shoot, I know what it was.
All right, come on, yeah,
I'm sorry.
yeah, come
Pretty
on.
mad last night.
That's okay, go.
Bench here, whatever you gotta do. Pride in our past. See, it's right there on that motto, don't you? Pride in our
Okay,
past.
yep.
Well, here's the past right here, in this box. I picked it up at the church, where you took all that food. The monuments are right on Airport Road. The monuments are the history of the historical church, wasn't it? On the registry, maybe, I don't know, but, here's what's left of all the history in this box right here. I'm just an American, I'm getting sick of this crap. I'm afraid to There's one of them. Pull that slide down, Mr. Blake. That's a lot of history there, ain't it?
There you go.
Did they
Here's your history, right here.
take down the monument?
Right in our past, hold on a minute.
So, what, hold on, why don't you go and speak into the microphone so we make sure we get it recorded?
Here, me, I'm sure.
Now, where did you get that plate from?
I wasn't aware they gonna be tearing down history, I never got that memo.
Yeah.
I just wondered, y'all got any comments to that?
When did they tear it down? I'm just kinda curious myself.
July 31st, last year, 2022, the Robert E. Lee Memorial was knocked down on Highway 25 right there at Calvary too.
Well, I'll say
I know
this,
that's all history, I thought.
well, hold on one second, and I'll say this. Council and staff have no obligation to respond to anybody that comes to public comment, for one. For two, I have no idea what you're talking about, and the town doesn't have anything to
Well,
do
you're
with
the
that.
head of the town of Fletcher.
But the
You're
town.
the head of the town of
But the
Fletcher.
town does not have anything to do with that.
So the county.
What you're referring
County,
to.
you go to county?
I am not sure, but we do not have anything to do with what you're referring to.
Okay, all right. I guess that's it. Thank you.
All right,
Teach
thank
the
you.
history of our town, okay?
We thank you for your comments.
Ain't no problem.
Did it come from the church?
Yes, ma'am.
It came from the church, so Calvary Episcopal took it down? Okay.
So real quick question, so did the church actually wanna take it down?
Real proud of her. Man, there, I guess, I don't know.
Can I ask that question? Real quick, did the church actually take it down? Do you know?
I don't know if it did not, it just kind of surprised me.
Because it's a surprise to us as well, it looks like, that somebody's took it down. So,
Well, I might suggest approaching the church. That's all I can tell you. Do we have anybody else that wishes to speak during public comment? All righty, we're moving on. We're on item number 1, the approval of the minutes. Are any corrections, additions, deletions to the minutes presented? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved.
All right, a motion to approve the minutes, is there a second?
second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to updates from council, I was going to mention one update, the Christmas in the Park went wonderful, and we thank you all for that despite the rain. Still had a great turnout. Any other updates? All righty, seeing none. Moving on to the consent agenda, any questions, comments, concerns related to any item on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item number 4, it's my item, discussion and selection of, discussion and selection of a council member to serve as mayor pro tem. Bob, and thank you for serving for the past couple of years as mayor pro tem. However, I have approached Councilmember Franklin. She's indicated she's willing to serve in that role. Is there any opposition to that? If not, is there a motion to appoint Councilmember Franklin? You're still willing, right?
Yes, sir.
All righty. Councilmember Franklin, is there a motion to appoint Councilmember Franklin to serve as mayor pro tem?
I make the motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. And thank you, Sheila, for being willing to serve in that role.
Thank you.
All righty, item number 5, the presentation of the year-end audit. We have Ms. Avery here, and Assistant Town Manager, are you presenting as well? Or just? All righty. And we thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you.
Did you ever notice that usually when you come over here, the weather is really cold?
Yes, it's usually cold and windy. Have noticed that. The town received an unqualified opinion on their audit. It's been approved by the LGC, and that's what you're required to have, to be an unqualified opinion, which in essence means that the financial statements are fairly presented. And I know y'all have a copy of the audit. I'm going to go through highlights. I gave everybody a copy of that, and if anybody has any questions more, I'll go over that. The town's main fund is their general fund. Does everybody have that?
Do we all have it?
Yeah.
I think so. Thank you.
Okay. Cash investments at the end of the year was $10,252,340, which is an increase of about $3.3 million. Of that, $9.7 million is your regular cash that you can spend. Restricted cash included in that is $521,000 for Powellville, and public safety is $15,491. Your total assets are $11,250,211, and that's an increase of about $3.3 million, and that's attributed to the increase in your cash this year. Your fund balance was $11,119,786, which is an increase of $3,339,000, and that was your net income for the year. Your total revenue was $8,963,000, and that's an increase of about $356,000. Your ad valorem taxes were basically the same as in the prior year. Your sales tax were up about $142,000. The ABC revenue was up about $30,000. Recreation was up about $12,000, and interest income was up about $174,000 due to the increase in the interest rates and your increase in your cash. Your total expenditures were $8,355,297, which is an increase of about $575,000. Your general government, which would be like finance and the board and stuff, had a decrease of about $98,000. Your public safety was up about $313,000, and that was mostly due to an increase in capital outlay and a contract with the fire department. Your economic development was up about $64,000. Transportation was down about $331,000. In the prior year, you had a good bit of Powellville expenditures and capital outlay in the street department or transportation that you didn't have in the current year. Your cultural and recreation was up about $517,000, and That was mostly due to capital outlay. Your other financing sources uses is $64,645, and that's a sale of an asset of about $20,000, and some IT. Your increase in fund balance was $3,339,847. That's an increase from the prior year of $2,132,461. You had actually appropriated to use $670,000 of fund balance, but instead you actually added $3.3 million to your fund balance. So that was a very good accomplishment. Your ad valorem taxes was $4,853,000, which is virtually the same as the prior year. Your percent collected is 99.79, which is virtually the same as the prior year. The state average is 99.12, and that's a year or so old average. They haven't come out with anything more recent. Your investment income was $179,000, which, like I said before, was an increase of about $174,000. And that increase is due to your increase in cash and the rates you're receiving. Your fund balance available this year is $122.07%. You have a fund balance policy of 45%, so you're well above your policy. And the average of towns or municipalities similar to size of Fletcher, there's a 63%. So you're doing quite well at 122%. And 8.3% represents about 1 month's worth of expenditures. So you're well above that. Does anyone have any questions about the general fund?
Any questions? Doesn't look like it.
In your other fund, you had the COVID money that you had received. So you had revenue of $2,667,139, and you ended up transferring that money into the general fund this year, and so that fund was actually closed.
All righty. Do we have any other questions or comments? Doesn't look like it. We appreciate you. Thank you.
And if anybody later has questions or, anything, be glad to answer them, or phone call or whatever, if there's something that comes up that somebody has a concern or a question not clear.
All righty, thank you so much.
Just one comment, some of the big increase in revenues that went to reserves is because of the ARP funds.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
more money,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, it's
That-
It's a million, yeah.
Yeah, of the 3 million, 2.6 was the COVID money that came into the general fund.
Okay.
And we did set up a designated fund balance for capital projects at the like amount, at the 2.6 million, whatever the exact amount was for the ARP allocation.
Okay. Sounds good. We thank you, as always. And Heather, thank you as well.
Yep. Yeah, Heather continues work on the financial statements on it, so that's a big help to have that in-house expertise to do that.
Heather does a wonderful job. She does, out of all my clients, she does the best. She honestly does the best job of anybody out
I
there.
have another career after this one, right?
She does.
You're not leaving us, Heather. We thank you. All righty, moving on to item number 6, presentation by the Carlin Company on Town Center Project. We got Mr. Brad Goodson.
That's it. So neither, I'm not a public speaker, so I'll fumble through this in front of you. So,
That's
as
okay.
the introduction, I'm Brad Goodson, as you mentioned, with the Carlin Company. It's a small development company that I have. By day, I work with a grading contractor. We've done many, for better, for worse projects, or worked on many of your projects in your area in Fletcher and about. So that's about me personally. So the proposal had to do with your property, along 25, and I met with Mark and Eric, and we kind of vetted through. I just a hypothetical proposal, and this is my, a brief presentation to you guys regarding that. You know very well, you have very, valuable piece of property there that you've acquired for a specific purpose. I'll sound like I'm selling against myself when I go through this, but, my proposal is not the highest and best, it's not a traditional development in that free market is determining, a developer is coming to get the highest return on that property. And that said, you're not going to get the highest return if you're looking for a monetary return on that property. And I'm prefacing that in that our proposal is a partnership where we come, alongside each other so that you can, develop your vision for that property. Obviously we would want a return or would expect a return on our portion of it, but, I know it sounds, kind of pie in the sky, but, like I say, we're part of the community and I sometimes instead of, just day-to-day work, we like to do stuff that is fun, and this is what we're trying to propose here, not only as a development, but also to, create a town core that I think you're looking for. So that's kind of the opening remarks. I gave you a little handout, very simple, basic, that kind of runs down what I see as, kind of the key points of a partnership like I'm proposing. Like I say, it's for this parcel out here, the concept would be some small, small business, restaurants, retail, somewhere 1 to 3 stories and in a town, small town concept. I gave, if you look at the picture I attached, I mean, those look like every small town that we go to, from Hendersonville, Brevard, Apex, Saluda, similar to that concept. And those would be the style that we would go into due diligence to plan out and see if you could make the concept work. So what we'd be asking for is, a due diligence period where we could, vet that proposal out, on the cost side and try to develop some type of partnership agreement. If you run down there just down our responsibility would be that we're saying that we would, during this block of time, develop a schematic design for the layout of that entire parcel, although we're just, we scaled back what we would be asking for as far as where the buildings that we think we can, handle the development of. So, we would pay for that, we would pay for the, schematic designs, we vet out whether we can get it financed, and during that time, I would ask for, your portion of it would be, meet with me, once every 2 weeks, Eric, Mark, and whoever else, and help, guide the design. And during those times, certainly the town would have to contribute in some way to, if you're trying to build something that's not market driven, you could certainly put that on the market and sell it to an apartment, a storage unit. I mean, there's various things that people can put on there and make work and pay you for the property higher. But in this scenario, we would be open book on the finances, and it would determine, what can the development, what can it do revenue-wise to offset that, and then the difference, whether that's infrastructure or, various ways that, you can offset that, subsidize it to make it develop in the way that you all want, if you want a particular type of development. So those are the ways I did that. It's probably a $10 or $15 million project, looks like. It'll probably take 2 years. The remaining parcels, so we're just looking at the strip along this Fanning Bridge extension, right? So the remaining parcels to the north, or to the south would be, you know, open once the concept or the layout of the roads and blocks is settled, then, you know, you would have the ability to, you know, market those any way you see fit. So anyway, that's my brief rundown. You know, certainly would love to meet with you more if you have any interest in it, and, you know, we could sit down and figure out, you know, where that partnership or how that partnership looks or is even possible in a public-private setting. You know, I'm not smart enough to know all those nuances, but I do know we could figure that out. And so that's my brief proposal. Certainly open to any questions, or, you know, certainly think about it and pop some questions through Mark via email. Be glad to hear them.
You take questions tonight?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I had a question, but go ahead and ask.
Do you have any idea what your proposal would be for that first two buildings?
Yeah, I mean, they'd be very similar to those snippets on page 2. that-
No, I mean business-wise.
Well, I mean, we would build a shell,
Yeah.
and then it would be a tenant upfit, so, you know.
So you're not sure who your anchor business would be?
Not until we, you know, get.
Because we've heard, like in that corner, we've heard, you know, Triangle Stop, and, you know, you've got to have some sort of anchor business that will, you know, generate foot traffic.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure if you had something
know,
in
and
mind.
that was what I talked to Mark and Eric about, is that, no, we're not proposing an anchor like that. We're proposing
Right.
that you partner to, you know, if, you know, I don't know what an example, but, you know, you have several businesses very similar to what we would market to here, you know, across the street. You have a consignment store, you have restaurants, and those would be the same businesses that we would market to.
You're just interested in actually getting the development, getting the building done.
Yeah.
For the first two buildings in pink and blue, which would be about 22,000 square feet together. One says 19,996 and one says
20 and 13.
27,996.
33,000 or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I might have read that wrong.
And then if a second story, you know, if, you know, it could be, you know, it's open to discussion, but, you know, when we did the brief analysis, it'd be like apartments upstairs, or some, you know, work office, small office space upstairs.
Well, I love that park in the corner. I don't think any of us would argue with you about doing a park in the corner. That's just beautiful. And that Apex building, that's exactly what I would envision it
When
would
you
be.
drive down that street, I mean, it is
Yeah.
what I would see if I.
It would blend well with what we have. The problem is that the driver is going to be whoever needs that space and what they want it to look like. So,
Yeah,
I
we
think
would
there's
build
still
the
a lot of
exterior. I mean,
questions.
that would be part of the 4 months, you know, schematic designs, that the exterior would be, you know, architecture would be set.
Am
Like I
I?
say, those would be rental units, so that, you know, it's not as driven quite as much by, you know, if you had you know, a First Citizens or something that wanted to build a particular building, you know, that we're building a lease space.
Just lease,
Yeah.
okay.
So am I understanding correctly in this proposal that where we have future park, that will remain fully in the town's control for us to develop for a future park?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of it remains in your control. I think that, you know, and because it's 7 acres, you know, it's a pretty substantial project if you took
Right.
it all. You know, as a whole, I mean, we wouldn't be willing or able to do that.
Right.
You know, and I think you need some proof of concept, so you build one, you know, one building or 2, and that way it, you know, starts to develop in that way. You see if anything else, or maybe you get an anchor for one of those other parcels that is, you know, benefits, you know, you can purchase that, or the numbers work different for it, but I think this is just establishing kind of that ground framework, and then putting 2 buildings out there.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of a park. You might have mentioned this. Have you done any other development similar to this in the
No, we
area?
haven't, no.
Okay.
No, I would say that, you know, if we do you know, if this is something that we engage in, we would certainly reach out to other, you know.
Of course,
It's,
yeah.
it's not a traditional development, and so it's been a little hard to get other people's mind around, you know.
Mhm.
They want to buy that property and build what they build.
Sure.
That makes sense.
Sure,
You purchased the property for a particular reason.
right.
I mean, you're not a developer, so you didn't purchase it, you want a concept.
Mhm.
In order to have your concept, then you have to partner in it, you know, otherwise just put a sign on it and you'll get a good price. for
Yeah, of
the
course.
property you have.
What
So,
developments have you done?
What have we done as a contractor? Sierra Nevada, All the Seasons,
Or you did Seasons Apartments?
yeah,
Okay.
we've done Fernleaf, the new Fernleaf, the Sycamore Cottages.
Nice.
Highway 25, the other Highway 25, I don't know, a whole host of them around here.
Okay.
Brad, I don't know if you mentioned the name of your firm, but he's with Tinoka Construction was, I don't know if you'd
Yeah.
mentioned at the beginning of it. Yeah, so the grading company.
So basically, what you're, just trying to wrap my brain around this real quick. So as you're saying, you want the town of Fletcher to be a partner with you, so we would be the cash, I guess, the cash cow to do this project. Only thing you'll be doing is building the buildings for us?
No,
or-
sir, what I'm saying as a partner is that, you know, we would propose, you know, come up with this style of development, which is a lower value or lower rent, you know, you're gonna get businesses that are a little lower rent than a big box store. You're gonna get, you know, for you to drive the development, then we're partnering with you for whatever portion the numbers don't.
So if you don't get the numbers you want, the town will have to pay for the numbers, what you're saying?
Well, I think that you'd look at, you know, maybe doing some of the infrastructure, or maybe, you know, maybe the ground those buildings sits on, you know, the price is, you know, subsidized or something, but like I say, in this proposal, it would be open book to where we say, all right, we start plugging these variables in. I mean, it's a mathematical calculation,
Right.
you know, we do have to assume rents, we have to assume time periods.
So with that right there, it's the properties, you know, of course, the town, and then we put all the infrastructure and everything else, we get tied into it, and you're building the building, you start leasing the stuff, who gets the money?
Well, I don't know yet how much of that you even have to put in. Maybe the rents work it out where you don't. You know, that's what I'm saying, that that's a variable. You know, if you say it's gonna earn $100 a month, and you back into what the cost has to be, and we know what our building is, it's the delta. So I'm not saying you have to put all that in. I'm saying that we have to do the schematic design and back into what the building, you know, and create what the building costs and what the rent's gonna be. And then that tells us what portion of the infrastructure, I mean, and we say, you know, what we wanna make, you know, a reasonable return.
Yeah.
You know, say 8-10%. We set those variables, create, you know, establish what those variables are, and then that tells what the land, what can go to land and what can go to the infrastructure. And then you have to make that gap up.
Yeah, the town will make the gap up, but again,
Yeah.
once the building's complete, who makes the money off the buildings for the rent?
Well, in that financial analyzation, that would,
It'd be you or us, who would it be? That's just
we
what
would
you-
make our 8 to 10%.
And then it would be the cities after, it would be the town of Fletcher after that?
Well, no, I think, well, like I say, it's all over, you know, but no, I think that the building, the footprint at least you would want to sell to me.
I mean, the pictures, design, I do like them, the historic, like, matching the Fletcher Feed and Seed, you know, that's really nice, I think everybody likes that, they don't want the big box stuff, like you're saying, the Walmart or whatever, another bank or anything like that, since we got like 4 banks in the same strip, but I was just kinda curious about the
And say,
partnership you're talking
Back
about.
to the money thing, I mean, since we're creating a partnership, there's no reason why you couldn't say, all right, at this period, if the revenue or our return is higher or lower, then we share in that too. It's part of it's just a mathematical calculation.
Right now, it's like it's very broad
It
with
is,
the
yeah.
partnership you're saying, so it's,
And like I say,
A lot of
our
questions.
goal is not to, receive from the town and have a win, but no one would do anything if they don't get a reasonable return, but like I say, you share in what if it goes the other way? You share in that as well. So it's, you could make a clause that says you share in the up or down. And because there is risk, there'd be risk on our side, less risk on your side because yours would be a fixed amount once it's determined. I can't say what that amount is.
So in the long term, you're envisioning your company owning the buildings and the property that they're sitting on, and I don't know, maybe some of the parking, and then the town would be responsible for trying to find tenants for the rest of the parcel?
I think so. And the parking, I don't know that, who owns the parking in any town? That's a town of Brevard, say, they own the streets of the parking, right? So that's public infrastructure.
Brad, you indicated a 4-month engagement period, and that's still what was
I think from
in
the time,
here
I don't know
to-
that I would start it today, but, 4 months from when, we kind of come to agreement. And that, only reason is that we're going to invest $30,000-$40,000 to come up with the schematic design and do the financial analysis to present to you, and you're not on the hook for that, but we would need time to, if we're going to invest that, we would want, a time period that we, have the right to it.
And the plan and the analysis that you're talking about is just for these 2 buildings?
I think you need to land plan the whole thing. You can ask your engineer, or, I think it's a better question for them. Personally, I think you need to land plan the whole thing, create the parcels, and then my building proposal is just that.
Yeah, I would just caution you'd want to know what the impact on the rest of the property is, because if you enter into an agreement and you develop 2 buildings there, what impact does that have on the rest of the property as far as the rest of the mixed-use stuff they're trying to do? And I think back to some of the questions, comments Councilman Lance had, and Councilwoman Franklin, the arrangement could be a straight sale with conditions on the type of development or some type of lease arrangement. Most of the discussions we've been having with developers has been about selling some part of the land. And then there's a public-private partnership if you're trying to leverage it to get something that just isn't the easiest, highest, and best use out there. Kind of get it over that financial hump to make the numbers work for the types of things we want to see that a developer would be doing.
I think that's where the problem comes, is that, to condition it is where then you become dictating the development. So you're dictating what return can come out of it. And then, so somebody, say a Triangle real estate, they're gonna build, they wanna build a 4-story apartment, which is great. They do a great job, but if that's not what you want, that's not then you have to engage in some level of partnership investment.
Thank you very much.
All right, anything else?
Well, do we have any other questions or comments? I don't look like it, but thank you for being here this evening.
No problem.
Now, I'll be having some, please let me know your feedback from both presentations, and be trying to work towards kind of what might be a suggestion for next steps in doing a public engagement, like a letter of intent or some other type of document to temporarily commit to let someone do the due diligence that both groups have spoken about.
You said was there a third one?
Yeah, and I don't think they're far enough along. I'm going to reach back out to them and see if they can come, but my guess is not yet, but I'll find out. And then,
It'd be nice, because
Yeah.
like Bob's always says, we're not really in the bind to try to sell the land,
Yeah.
so just want to make sure everything's done
Yeah.
correctly for the
Right.
citizens.
Got one opportunity to do it right.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Any other questions, comments there? Looks like not. Moving on to item number 7, the cost estimate for streets recommended for resurfacing. Mr. Kathy, we thank you for being here this evening. Doing well. Hope you are.
Can I offer one statement on what y'all just discussed?
Absolutely.
In some of my discussions with Mark and my knowledge of Brad, I know we've crossed paths with them on numerous occasions on jobs, and they're probably one of the best and most reliable contractors in this town. So from a character perspective, I have not done a personal development with him, but he's been one of the most trustworthy contractors, and it seems like that arrangement that he's talking about, but to give y'all some control in what's happening and then an opportunity. That's just what I observed as somebody in the business that does a lot of work for y'all, so I just wanted to give my 2 cents there.
Yeah.
Didn't know if you wanted or not, but.
Thanks for
No,
sharing
that
that
carries a
feedback.
lot of weight
That's
coming
helpful.
from you. Thank you.
It was a refreshing, at least per the vision we've been trying to
Yeah.
do, to see some of the concepts that Mr. Goodson had, so.
Sure.
Like I say, in multiple observations, he's not always been about the bottom dollar. What's right and the product that's left behind is important, so that feels like what he may be trying to, and I don't know, I'm not seeing the proposal, that just. As
I didn't bring him in here to speak.
I didn't either. When I saw him, I was like, hey, what are you doing? Yeah, that was,
No, we get to hear from him every now and then.
I felt like I have seen that picture before, so.
No, I mean,
Didn't mean to hijack the.
No, that's fine. I appreciate those comments. It's a stark reminder that we are in local government and we're here to serve people. And like Mark said, might not always be the highest and best use for that property, but whatever the best use is for us and our vision,
Right.
that's what we're shooting towards. So we appreciate that.
Sure.
Thank you.
I'll be quiet now. Sure, I guess y'all have a copy of the estimate, so that would be for continued
Yeah, you should
drive
have one on the dais here. Yep.
and
And it was
Snowball
emailed.
Lane. There's a little extra expense on Snowball Lane because they have some obvious settlement issues that aren't going to be minor. Roadways don't settle that much if there's nothing going on below them. And then on Continuum, with that being an industrial development, we would expect, in the one spot we got to check that, we believe that pavement section is much thicker and just be a little bit more expensive to deal with, to remove it and repair it. So that's the few of the oddities there with the unit prices, but
Okay.
if there's.
So with, like Snowball Lane, you're saying one of the obstacles is the soil's been subsiding and stuff, and you're talking here about removing 12 inches and putting in 12 inches of CABC, but how do you know what caused the sinking in the first place?
We don't know. There's typical causes of it. In that neighborhood, we have, when I say that neighborhood, that, is it? Part of the Wildwood, that there has been, historically, we've seen some of these, and the some of the stories are that they buried stumps and debris in the driveways, and I've never seen, I mean, there's driveways that have settled a foot, and some of this is probably 10 inches or something. You can see a clear depression. And when we see that in this part of the country, it's usually someone has buried something that has now decayed, or it was just completely soft, and then they have now, you know, it's just settled over time.
So you cut that out?
Yeah, usually you have to, we used to have to go excavate that, and that line item is called undercut. So we just undercut that, and we backfill it with stone. It's, for that small a quantity, it's not worth trying to go find. You can put a good soil back in, it's just not worth trying to find it for that small of a quantity like that.
But my question to you is, because I live in the subdivision that's had all these issues over the years, and I've seen driveways where they've gone in and taken out dump trucks full of stumps and stuff that are buried under people's driveways. How do you know you're not gonna get that? Or if you do start seeing that, you just keep digging until you get the fresh dirt?
Pretty much. There has been occasions that, we did the landfill one time, and we stopped and said, let's just try to cover it, and the term is try to bridge over it. But that's not a true, complete repair. You know there's gonna be problems coming with that feature. But sometimes you only have a certain amount of money, and you can't go get it all, but I wouldn't expect these to be infinite. The way the settlement occurs, these are very isolated. I mean, one of them is almost like a little pool, and the other one, you can see the extents of it. So generally, when you see that, it's going to be confined to those areas.
I mean, there's a house right around the corner from me that had severe sinking just in the driveway, nowhere else, just in the driveway. And they sold it. It was, I think, condemned, and they sold it, and the condition of the person buying it was the bank had to fix that. And when they went in there, they took out, I think it was 2 dump truck loads full of stumps out of one hole. I mean, they just packed them in there.
I don't doubt that.
And it's the same developer, so if they did it over there, there's a halfway decent chance that they did it over there on Snowball Lane.
Yeah, and I can't remember the name of the street, but I know we've gone about as deep as 4 feet deep. So we hope we don't peter, but that's why we have a unit price in there that when we hit it, we go get it, and we can kind of quantify that, the volume of that material, and thus the cost of it as it's being done. So that's one of the reasons we do that, so that if we do lump sum, if we did a lump sum bid and then we went out there, it would just be like, all right, do we stop and get a price? The unit price just allows us to control that and quickly inform you of what's going on.
Okay.
So on the 2 different roads, we've got a 1/2 inch difference in the asphalt thickness. Seeing how one's commercial, it's gonna have lots of tractor trailers and all that kind of stuff, is that sufficient? I mean, is that normal to only be?
Yeah, that is, well, and actually the reason that is on Continuum in that industrial park. There's a pretty good stretch of that the road was intended to be crowned, but it's just very, very flat. So actually on the outside edge, we plan on being 1.5 inches thick. And then we're going to thicken it in the middle so that we can more clearly define the crown and improve the drainage. But thickness-wise, the road's already, the structure's already there. Our overlay is going to be to renew that surface, protect that surface, and seal that surface.
So you're going to leave the old pavement there?
Yes.
And go directly over top of it with an additional 2.5 inches on the edges?
But 1.5 inches on the edge to 2.5 in the middle.
Okay. And then the difference would be on Snowball, you're going to actually take up the pavement and remake the road bed and then pave it? Or
No,
just,
actually,
or just in the section where it's?
Just in the sections where we see, when the pavement repair unit line item on there is in areas where we feel like there is a problem below the pavement. And we have to cut it out and go investigate what's going on beneath it, patch it back, and then we overlay the entire street. Usually the only spot that we will mill and then overlay is if we have curb and gutter or some other restriction that keeps us from going ahead and raising it up.
Okay.
And both of these, neither of these have curb and gutter, so we have that liberty to increase their elevation a little bit.
And we also have, in the budget that Ben McGill Associates put together, a 10% contingency, so that also could play in to cover if it goes over an anticipated undercut that's needed, or tree debris, if you run into some things like that. I'm not saying it's gonna cover it 100%, but more often than not, we don't go into that contingency, so.
I think statistically speaking, I think we've gone over 1 out of 10 years on this.
Yeah.
And it was undercut that caused the problem that year. So, I mean, we could come in with a not to exceed number, but, I don't want to come in here and give you elevated numbers that aren't reasonable all the time either, so.
Sure.
So on Snowball, we visibly have a section that has a dip where it's been decaying underneath it. Okay. On Continuum, is there any spots on that one that appear to have the same issue or same type issue where it's
Minor compared to.
minor? So that's
Yeah,
where
I mean, you see a little bit of settlement and the pavement breaking down over there, which is an indication of of the subgrade giving a little bit.
is that where you plan on undercutting the 12 inches?
On Continuum,
Continuum?
I don't know that we have that's just there again, that's a unit price. If we use it, we pay at that unit price. If we don't need it there, we will not pay that. So but we need to put some amount in the contract.
So on the quantity, what does the 250 represent? The square yard?
Yes.
Mark, will this money come out of the POW bill?
Yes.
And it looks like, how much is left in the POW bill? It's 106?
We'll get one more deposit, and we get 2 deposits during the year for Powell bill, and I think we budgeted 215,000.
Yeah.
We're gonna come real close. It might be a little under, it might be a little over with the second deposit. So with the dispersing account that we use to cover this and any other Powell bill eligible expenses or planned expenditures, with what we have in there, it's about 200,000 right now, and then the second deposit, we should be just a little over 300,000. So there should be, unless bids come in crazy, there should be more than enough room in there to cover this project plus some other expenses that we have in there, like the radar unit trailer was coming out of this. It came in, by the way. And then Jabo's got some snow plows that are being replaced or purchased. And there's some miscellaneous expenses, but we do a spreadsheet to track it to make sure we have enough money in there to not have to go to reserves. And typically, we spend underneath enough to have a little bit that rolls from this dispersing count to the next year, so you're not cutting it real close.
Do we have any kind of a target that we try to keep in there for emergencies?
I would say we've typically tried to keep around 50,000 roughly. I mean, I think depending on how bids come in and you go forward with this, we'll probably have in the neighborhood of 50,000, maybe plus, somewhere in there at the end of the year. I don't like us depleting it down, because then, the next year you're trying to do projects and bid. We've tried to go a little more aggressive on some, if you remember in years past, where it's like, I don't know if there's enough in there to cover this. We might have to go to reserves. And we used to have about 600,000 in reserves, Powellville reserves, not fund balance on the side. And then we dipped into it several years back to try and move a little bit ahead on a bunch of road project work, and it took 200,000 from it. So We're over 400,000 in reserves right now, aside from this dispersing account. I was
In the
talking
Powell
about.
bill reserves, 400,000.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll be in good shape with this. It's two roads aren't very long. They're a little more costly because of the potential undercut issues in commercial nature at Continuum.
Now, Ben, do y'all plan on Snowball to also crown that road? Or are you just gonna do the full 1.5 inch lay following the contour of the road that as it exists?
Yeah, I don't think it was fine, and it had a very good longitudinal slope as
Yeah.
well. So.
So it's not necessary to crown like you're gonna do the Continuum?
Yeah, Continuum, there was one stretch of it that it was relatively flat longitudinally, and there was no super elevation, and the crown was just not defined.
Yeah, I was just
We had
trying to
to shoot it to
determine if
actually
we're gonna have
determine.
1.5 inch all the way across, or if it would be crowned like
No,
this one will
it
be less on the
yeah,
ends.
so that one will just be generally.
So you just averaged the 2 inches, because like you said, you'd be doing 1.5 inches and then probably 2.5 in the center.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, do we have any other questions or comments?
Looks good to me.
Yeah.
All righty, we thank you, sir.
All right, thanks, good to see y'all.
Good to see you too.
So we'll bid this, we'll help, McGill Associates, Ben's firm, will work on a final design on this and a bid packet. And then we've typically been sending that out in February and then, January, excuse me. So bids in January, trying to get a lowest responsible bidder February, and then typically starting in March sometime because of the asphalt plants have to open back up, so.
So try to get the bids when they're hungry.
Yep.
All right, sounds good.
Share it with anybody, we share it and pay it. That's the actual idea. They're gonna give us a better price in January than August.
Yep.
All right, we appreciate you. All right, moving on to item number 8, we have Mr. Greg Walker, Parks and Rec Director, for a discussion about the pickleball courts. Thank you for being here this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to also thank you for having the vision and commitment to building these multi-courts back this spring and early fall. They've been a great addition to our park and very popular. I've got an updated report for each of you through last week. I think you got one that went through last weekend.
Thank you.
This gets you hopefully through this coming weekend or the past weekend. September, obviously, was when we opened, September 5th. Beautiful fall season, so we had a 76 reserves for the month of September, which was 114 hours of reserve time, 30 town residents, 46 non-residents. For the past 14 weeks, we've had 151 reserves, court times. That's 10.78 rentals a week, or 1.5 rentals per day. October, as the weather started to turn a little bit cooler, we were 44 total reservations with 66 hours of playtime, and that's reserve time. We're open throughout the week, 7 days a week from 8 a.m. till dark, so that's well over 200 hours of available playtime to the public. We had 16 town resident reservations, 28 non-residents during the month of October. November and December kind of mashed together. We lost daylight savings time, so in the fall and September and October, we had two groups that had created Tuesday night play and Friday night play. As we rolled into loss of daylight savings time, a lot of that traffic has rolled into our Sunday afternoons. And Sunday afternoons have gotten quite busy in the month of late November and December. We've had 31 total reservations, 10 resident, 21 non-resident, for 46 and a half hours of play. Total rentals, you can see 56 were made by Fletcher residents, 95 by non-residents. We've generated $573 to date through this past weekend. We do have some reservations set on the reserves for this coming weekend, the 17th. We do have a block on Sunday afternoon for 4 court times. And what we've seen is that we've got a lot of daily walk-in public play, but we've got a lot of people that like to be able to reserve court time so that An example is we had one young lady that reserved the court so her and her mother could come play because she wanted to teach her mother. We've got some families that reserve court time so that their young children can learn the game as well. So normally there's, for most situations on a Saturday or Sunday, there's normally at least 1 or 2 courts open if there are other courts reserved. We've had one occasion where 4 courts were reserved at one block time. That was this past weekend, and it was a moot point because it rained all day on Sunday. So, but the general consensus has been that our players that play, our general public that come in enjoy having that option to reserve courts. You can show up any day and play. As I said, the courts are open at 8 a.m. This time of year, they close about 5 because of daylight savings time. And then obviously when we get back to the spring, we'll push later into the hours as the park operates into 7:30, 9 p.m.
And the Parks Advisory Board had a recommendation about.
Right, so 2 weeks ago, they met, reviewed these same statistics, and their recommendation was that we continue with our reserve system through the spring and through the summer. They'd like to get 1 full year of data going into next September so we can kind of see what happens. We know there's going to be a spike in play when we get back to the spring season, just in pickleball and tennis in general, and also our basketball courts are very busy, but also that would give us the spring months to review and summer months so that we could have 1 year of full data to take a look at, do we want to continue with reservations, or is there a reason that's really a valid reason to maybe make a change? The only thing that, looking at it from a professional side, looking in, that I might think going next year is if Sundays continue to be popular as we roll out of spring and summer season because of loss of daylight saving times, maybe we create Sunday as a non-reserve time during the winter months and make that family open play to avoid the courts being blocked up by groups when we have limited time because we've lost that evening play.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I know there was a concern from Mr. Todd about couldn't go in and play because of I guess they are a paddle line, I guess we talked about.
We have a paddle rack there
Yeah.
that's available for players to use. So that's a system that players have to buy into themselves. They have to be willing to come and say, next up.
But if somebody comes in and reserves it, that kind of kills that line.
Well, we would still have 3 courts available.
Yeah. And that's one thing he mentioned that kind of, I kind of liked, where he talked about, we had 4 courts. Why can't we make 1 court just an open court and let that paddle play? I don't play.
And we could look at, if we want to make a change, saying that we have courts 1, 2, 3, and 4, that we designate one as a non-rentable court.
Just get best of both worlds like that. I thought that was a pretty good idea, because I don't play the sport. I don't know what this paddle line is and everything else. So,
Right.
but that made sense to me. You had best of both worlds, so somebody from the residents can come in. If somebody's got reserved from outside, they can come in and get into the paddle line, and they can play. That's just my opinion, so.
And then that works for a player that's a regular pickleball player, but in a dad and daughter situation, they're probably not going to jump in that paddle line because they haven't got the expertise
Right.
for the players that are going to be there. So that's why the reserve piece we found has been very welcome by the community, because it gives them that opportunity to share that court time and grow that experience.
But right now, we got, all courts are 100% reserved, correct?
No, never. So.
But somebody comes in reserve.
They could be reserved, but I went back through and looked at all of our data. We've only had 1 day out of the entire season that showed 4 courts booked at the same time.
That's what he was complaining about. He had a lot of people playing, and somebody reserved right in the middle of the
Sunday
day.
he came
They
out,
had to
we
stop.
We
Yeah.
had 3 courts reserved, and we already had people that had gravitated to the open
Yeah.
court. But they were reserved from 2 to 3:30, and then there was another group, different group of players that came in and had them reserved behind from 3:30 to 5 o'clock. So there's also, as a Fletcher resident, you can reserve a court for $1.
Right.
If you know that that's the day of the week you can play, you have that option there. But the option to say, maybe we look and take 1 court as a non-rental court could be available.
You know what? Oh, no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I really think it's appropriate to continue doing what we're doing now, particularly if that's the Parks and Rec Board's recommendation. It seems like we might be making a knee-jerk reaction, because it's really been a relatively short time since the
Well, we've
courts.
had 1 complaint out of 151.
Right, yeah, it's been a relatively short time since the courts have been open, so it will probably do us good to wait until
And the
next
spring,
spring.
I think, is when we're going to see the most impact of just play. as we come back off the winter basis. So that might be a good time to look at April, May, and June, then say, hey, do we reevaluate the numbers? We can keep those updated monthly. And if we see that this is creating other scenarios, then maybe that's a good end of year, financial year starts new July 1. We look to make any changes, we could do that then.
That seems appropriate to me.
So in your observation, have the courts gotten more use from non-reservations than reservations?
Well, when you look at the total numbers, it's 95 non-residents versus 56 residents. So we have a lot of daytime play.
No, I mean, not whether they're residents and non-residents, in terms of reservations versus non-reservations. There's more people playing during the non-reservation time?
The busiest times right now are weekends, Saturday, Sunday.
I mean, I would kind of lean towards splitting it up and say two courts stick with reservations and two courts
Best of both worlds.
go with the, whoever gets there first.
Well, if you look at it month to month, the amount of residents has shrunk and the amount of non-residents has grown every month, even though you're showing a 56-95 ratio, but if you look, it's almost, the non-residents has grown every month.
And that's probably due
Percentage-wise,
to
yeah.
Percentage-wise.
dedicated pickleball players that are willing to come out in bad
Yeah.
weather. Very similar to when we rent our ball fields, July, August is all travel ball teams as opposed to local teams
Yeah.
that come in and play April, May. So,
Greg, we don't have data on how many people have played on the non-reservation times. that are
no,
out
we do
there.
not.
Yeah.
But we know that, those
Is that-
courts, there's an AM group that comes in Monday through Thursday that plays that early. There's a women's group that plays virtually almost every day.
And they're
Now,
not
it's all
reserved.
skewed once we hit 39 degrees. That seems to be the stopping point for whether I'm coming to pickleball at 8:30.
But those groups were not reserving.
Right,
Yeah,
they were just
yeah,
coming
so
up,
that
yeah.
doesn't,
And we had a couple of afternoon groups the same way. They weren't reserving time. They were just coming in and using the courts for public play, just similar to our basketball courts. They're very busy on a sunny 50-degree day on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon.
but your data is showing that it's primarily the weekends.
Correct,
where we're
and
seeing
that's
this.
been
That's
the big
biggest
push in
concentration.
November, December, because we lost evening capability when daylight saving times disappeared. And there were two groups that we had been tracking that had been playing on a Tuesday evening, 5 to 7, and a Friday evening, and they jumped their days over to Sunday to play. So that created, instead of only having 2 rentals on a Sunday, now suddenly we had 5 on a Sunday, because it was 2 different user groups that moved to weekend play.
Have you had any issues with people that had reservations and the people that didn't have reservations?
The very first week we opened, because some people, there's a thing called Playtime Scheduler, that's an app that is available for people to see what courts are open and who's playing at those courts, but it's not a reservation system. So, but if people were putting their name that they were going to be at our place on Playtime, some people assumed that was a reservation. So once we were able to work through that the first week, we didn't have any more collisions with somebody that thought they had a schedule versus somebody that did have a schedule. And I like the idea of potentially, maybe we do look at 2 courts open all the time and 2 reserved. But I'd like to push at least through spring to kind of see what happens. Because it may be, if Sunday really is the demand day, then that may be the day that we say no reservations.
Yeah, and I'll say that the only thing that comes to mind with potentially splitting it, I think there could be an unintended consequence. If the percentage of non-residents is increasing month by month, then we're ultimately limiting the ability for Fletcher residents to reserve more courts.
Right, and we could increase the non-resident fee because it's still very nominal right now.
Right.
$1 for resident, $6 for non-residents. So as I've looked around the pickleball world and see what they're charging at other facilities, there's a number we could still move to if council decided that that was a better way to control non-resident impact on the courts.
I know we wanted the residents to have the first priority of everything, so, I mean, they paid for it, so.
Right.
I haven't gone down there to play yet, but if I should show up just to play and I haven't reserved a court, how am I going to know what's reserved at what time?
We have signs, we've got a kiosk message board that we update every day that
Yeah,
has.
you would have to do that every
Court
day.
2, Court 3. It was during the spring and summer, it was virtually every day. This time of year, it's basically make sure we have it up for the weekend, because with the weather, nobody's booking during the week.
And I noticed the same thing that Keith had mentioned, that it's increasingly, every month it's been non-residents more than residents. And then when you look at the total hours reserved, it's about 28 or 29% of the total hours that were available if we just figure 8 to 5. So I don't have heartburn in waiting until spring, but I definitely would lean toward having at least one court available that's not reserved, if not half. Even one court not reserved would probably go really well and go a long ways to suit those that are frustrated that they get off work and they can't get on a court. But I hear what you're saying. It's one resident, and I get that, but sometimes it can only be one resident that complains. There may be plenty more that they're not saying anything, they're just frustrated, and they probably keep trying.
Well, and from our perspective, I've spoke to this individual multiple times, and he plays at a lot of different facilities because he loves the game. He also indicated that he paid to play at other places as well.
Okay.
So that was the frustration I was having, was that if you're coming on Sunday to play at our place, and the courts are busy, and you're willing to pay at other facilities, there's a $1 fee to play at ours as a resident.
Yeah. And for me, it's not about the money. I know you probably hate for me to say that, and I know Mark probably does too, but I'm more concerned about, you want residents to be able to come and play.
Right.
So I would love to at least see one court freed up, but it's whatever the pleasure of the council is, I'll be fine with.
And we could work towards that change in the new year if that's something council wants to recommend.
The revenue's not that much from this.
It just
The
helps.
bigger thing was just trying to keep it a little more organized as far as people really wanted to play, being able to get, I guess, in there and reserve a time. It was something a little different we were doing. I mean, it could be 2 years from now, or whatever period of time, if we evaluate this and it seems best for the public to not reserve it, then we don't reserve it at all.
And the one thing we were trying to get ahead of, our location with dedicated courts, 7 miles from Buncombe County, 7.5 miles from part of Henderson County. We were one of the only areas that had dedicated courts until the Edneyville courts were open this fall. Everything else in our area, all the Buncombe County courts, Mills River courts, were shared courts that meant in the morning they might be tennis, in the afternoon there were pickleball, flip-flopping. So we knew having dedicated court time was going to create a lot of demand. So we were trying to create a scenario that would allow guaranteed use if a resident wanted to make sure they could have access.
Yeah, I would really, and I know I've kind of stressed this already, but I would really be concerned if we opened up one court or 2 courts just for free play right now, maybe in the future, yeah, but for right now, the numbers to me signify that more often than not, it's probably not going to be a Fletcher resident that's going to be using those open courts, if non-residents are the ones that are starting to use it more. Is that?
I'm glad you brought
That's what I would be worried about.
Excuse me, Mayor,
Sure.
that was a little bit of the rationale too of reserving it, because we knew probably likely you'd have more Buncombe County versus Town of Fletcher and Henderson County residents using it. We were hoping by making it reservations that, that to be a little more committed, they have to pay more money, considerably than a town resident, which it's so nominal now, it's almost nothing for a town resident to use, so.
Yeah, that's not the issue of them paying a small fee. It's just the issue that if you've got a resident that can't get on a court, then it is an issue. And I understand what you're saying. They can go on there and reserve like everyone else, but, I mean, there are a lot of people that they just want to be able to go to the court and play. And so I just don't want it to be totally taken up with tournaments from other counties. I definitely feel Trevor's sentiment that, residents, their taxpayers pay for this, and so we just want them to have that availability, even if it is just one court, but we can definitely wait till the spring and see what it looks like then, and, I mean, right now, we're seeing like 28 or 29% is of that time that was available is reserved, and I hear what you're saying, that at the end of the day, and the weekend, that's the high demand, so.
And it's going to be weather-driven now, between now and March.
Yeah,
We're going to be super busy. The first time the weatherman says sunny and 50 in January and February, if that happens. I mean, most likely we'll have very few rentals,
Yeah.
except for an occasional 2 o'clock rental on weekends. If it gets
Bob,
45
what's the
degrees.
cutoff date on golfing? I mean, not cutoff date, the cutoff temperature.
It's the wind that seems to drive.
It's the
pickleball
wind.
away.
Sleet, snow.
You didn't go today, right?
I didn't go today, but it wasn't the day.
39 degrees for pickleball, but none for,
39 is playable in golf, but not with 20-mile-an-hour winds.
yeah.
And the reason I brought up this, that, one, I wouldn't probably go all the way to half, is just to have best of both worlds for, if there was somebody trying to come in and outside residents basically reserve a court that nobody, they can't, hate for a resident to come here and all the courts reserved from outside people, and they can't play, so they had to turn around and leave. That's the only reason why I said one, and have the other 3 of reserve, so it kind of helps with the best of both worlds.
It'll be interesting to see, tracking the data, then does it continue to go up on the reservations, non-residents versus residents? But we'll have the challenge still, if you do away with reservations, we have no idea who's showing up and using it.
I wouldn't say do away with it, we just talked about maybe open one.
Right, I know, I heard what you said.
Well, I was just even say one. You
Just
three-
even
three-
one,
Yeah, 3 reservations and 1
See how that goes.
open play.
And I still think if part of the challenge is the non-resident impact, we consider taking that non-resident rental fee up.
And we can do that too. I agree with that.
So do we want to make changes tonight, or should we wait till spring, I guess is the question. My opinion is to wait till spring.
We can, yeah, it's just a discussion, I think we can.
Are we okay waiting till the spring?
Sure.
Will spring give you a full data? I guess?
Yeah, if we get through April, May, and by June, as we're going into the end of the financial year, that should give us pretty good numbers to look at.
Yeah, that was a good
We can
recommendation.
track that. I mean, play will start picking back up in March, most likely.
So
We
April,
haven't had
May,
any
what
issues
that-
with tennis so far, as far as court demand. I mean, the reservations that are there are sporadic, and they're mostly residents, it seems like.
I mean, part of the problem here is the way that people play pickleball, the ones that want to play almost like weekly in a little homemade league or something, they like to go and put their paddle there and just wait their turn and play, but that doesn't really fit in real well with the reservation system unless somebody's willing to pony up the money for the hours.
Right, and people like to play with the people they know. Not a lot of people want to play with a stranger. So, I mean, that's the downside of the paddle system. If you're the new guy, you got to jump on the court with 3 people that I've never played with, and not everybody's comfortable doing that. So that's what we saw the beauty of having that option to reserve a court. Me and my 2 grandkids can come play.
All right, well, sounds like we're good till, waiting till spring. Do we have any other questions, comments?
Do you want us to come back in April maybe and talk about this, or is that? no?
May would probably be better,
May,
because
okay.
that'll give, April should give us a full sunshine month.
Yeah.
March still might be a little off.
So we come back in May, look at May data, is that good for council?
That sounds appropriate to me. Any opposition?
Sure.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you
great.
for this
Thanks, Greg.
data.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All righty, moving on to item number 9, the proposed schedule for the upcoming year's budget process. Is this the same document we saw last week?
Yes, it is, Mayor. The only thing I added, and you got a copy on the dais, is the May 9th. We call it the budget retreat, but it's essentially an all-day budget workshop. I just put in there, we've historically met for breakfast, or we can have it brought in from maybe Costa's, but met at Costa's, and then the budget workshop started at 9. So that's on the May 9th. But just want to make sure these dates all come from, are they all, that it work for you as far as
Are we still
the
good?
key budget meetings? And
Yes.
I'll run through them again, January 8th, which is the regular meeting in January, to come at 4 PM for a work session. And then the next one to hold would be the March 19th budget workshop. And that's where department heads are presenting their recommended budget, or their, well, what the budgets they're requesting, I should say. And then, of course, May 9th for the budget workshop where I present the recommended budget.
Okay, I think we're all good. And Jim,
So
maybe
it's
it's
good. I've shared it with department heads. I just said I wanted to
Yeah.
run it by you again and make sure you have this and you put that on your calendars. And so good.
I think we're good. And Jim, you indicated you're good?
Yeah, no, I.
All righty. We thank you for putting that together. And I guess most immediately in January, we'll meet at 4 PM at our regular council meeting.
Yeah.
Let's be aware of that.
And we'll break we'll have some dinner brought in, so you have that covered. And then resume at 6 if you're comfortable with that for the regular meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
All righty, moving on to your comments, Mr. Manager.
All right, thank you. So last week I mentioned the alternative sites for Crown Castle. Again, we're kind of waiting. I emailed the rep, Jeff Lava, at Crown Castle later this afternoon. They're fairly far along with the site on Underwood Road, and they're going to get us some latitude, longitude, because we want to see a little more precisely where that is, especially so we knew if it was on the Buncombe County or Henderson County side of Underwood Road, because you're in Buncombe for a little bit as you're heading kind of north on it, and then it crosses over in Henderson. So that one's, they're pretty certain about. The Fanning Bridge Road site, they were still trying to see if they can nail down a specific place on Fanning Bridge, and apparently they were running into some issues with right-of-way, with DOT right-of-way. So I don't know if it was permission from DOT in their right-of-way, or if it was not enough room to work with what they were trying to do to either locate an antenna on a pole or on a light post. So that one appears to be up in the air a little bit.
Now that you mention it, I remember years back when we had, I don't know what the issue was on Fanning Bridge Road, but at the time, we were told that DOT didn't set aside normal right-of-ways on Fanning Bridge Road. In other words, they probably don't go as far into people's yards as what this cable company may be used to.
Okay. Yeah, and thanks for mentioning that. When I was talking to Eric Rufa a little bit about this, we were thinking, we thought there was enough. We were thinking generally 60 feet along the road.
I don't think they have that.
But it may not, and it may be much more narrow. So that one's still kind of up in the air. Eric emailed back real quickly to Crown Castle and then started to suggest maybe somewhere on Rutledge might be a location along there. But, I mean, this is an engineering analysis. We don't know technically where these things need to go in order that they can get improved cell reception. So that exercise still needs to happen, but I just want to let you know what's going on with it. And so they're still doing that. The next thing then would, we get the exact location, that gets shared with the public. They had indicated doing some type of public meeting, which I really think they should, to, share what are that it's safe and why is it safe, where they're located, if it's within whatever distance to a residence, and kind of the why and what are the benefits. So as soon as I get that, I'll share it with you, unless there's any other questions on that. I mentioned last week about the code enforcement action on 1 Oak Brook Road. That has been released. We're not obviously going forward with it since it's been sold. The property's being cleaned up. and they're kind of moving forward on their renovation of that site, so that's good news. The next thing I was going to mention, I said something last week about the guardrail request on Jackson Road, and we had an inquiry from a resident about a traffic accident where a car come off on the Livingston Farms side of the road there, and due to that, I put a request into DOT to look at a safety improvement to put guardrails in. They've responded. They're putting their review or analysis into, it has to go farther up, I guess, to Raleigh in January, and then they hope to know in March or April if it scores high enough to hopefully get approval and funding to put guardrails. It'd be really nice to see that there, because I think it is a legitimate safety issue for the residents on, in Livingston Farms along that side of the road.
I just wouldn't get your hopes up too high, because I remember when we had an issue there at the first ball fields by Fletcher Elementary School. There were a lot of people concerned that all these kids were playing right there, right next to the road. And we tried to get barriers up, and it took years of going back and forth before they were finally approved. So it's not something that comes easy.
No, I mean, we did get the spot safety improvements on Rutledge Road, and we might have got legislative contingency funds on that, so that might have gone a little bit
But
faster.
that was again probably driven by the major accidents that they were having there.
Yeah. So, but there is some accident history in there as well, so we'll see. I mentioned last week, we're doing one of our legislative priority meetings with our representative of our congressional offices or senator offices. So Robin Ramsey from Senator Tillis's office, we're going to meet with her on the 20th. So I've got Mayor and our new Mayor Pro Tem attending. Sheila, thank you. And I also in follow-up to that and kind of preparation, I have reached out to MSD about that sewer estimate for Westfeld, North Hudson, and Dogwood Terrace, and they've already provided me some updated figures. It wasn't significantly above the other estimate, but this will probably be more of a request to our state legislative delegation, but at least we've got some updated numbers. So, and we'll talk about greenways and some of the greenway cost for the extension of the greenway onto the Meritor property. And then I'll be setting up the meetings with the other legislators after that. We didn't have someone from Senator Budd's office since the rep that served our area had left, and they had not hired someone yet, at least as of right now. I know you talked about Christmas in the park, so we're just, again, thankful to be able to pull that off in light of the rain, and thank you to our people who came out and to our staff that helped pull that off, and we still had a decent crowd, so people were able to enjoy it, so that was good. And then the last thing I wanted to mention, the radar trailer that we've been waiting to get has come in. They had ordered it months ago. It's arrived. It's, the police department are going to be the ones selecting the areas that it'll go out. Public Works, I believe, is help transporting it. But the police department will be kind of managing the data collection and kind of the strategic where it's going. Livingston Farms is going to be our first area it's going to go into, and I'm not sure they got it out there, did they?
Yes, we're going to begin tonight. I mean, what they're planning is to leave it up for just a couple of days.
Okay.
And then go the day from that and move it, just keep it moving.
So it went today? It went over there or last week? Or?
I know we put it up there last week.
Okay, so it did go in last week. Okay.
So what kind of data does this provide?
It will record speeds. I don't think it gets into the level of detail like
So
our
what, speed and
radar
time of day or
equipment.
something?
Yeah,
Okay.
so speed, time of day, I don't think it gets into, but not knowledgeable just yet enough about if it'll record data, like on trucks versus cars. I mean, most of the places we're gonna put this, it's gonna be 99.9 or 99% passenger vehicles versus trucks in there, so, because we're really putting it predominantly on town-maintained roads. We could put it on DOT roads, and we probably will at some point, just help out and get more data. Yeah, I mean, I can imagine we'll have it on Fanning Bridge at some point or periodically. So we'll be moving that around, but, so good news, that's in.
Jebo, do you know, can we turn that radar machine off at like 10 o'clock at night or something so that we're not having flashing lights in somebody's yard or close to?
I think the chief and them were looking into that, and they're just gonna place some places where it didn't affect that.
Yeah.
But they've been looking through all the bells and whistles on it, so that they control that. It's been up and so far, I've not heard anything like that.
Okay.
And that's all I have there.
All righty. Well, I just had one question before we adjourn. I was reading in the news recently, I'm not sure if you saw, that Hendersonville got attacked by some ransomware.
Yeah.
We put in some safeguards against us the best that we
Yes.
can. I know we're doing the trainings too, right?
Yeah, and I don't know how they got in, so to speak,
Hendersonville.
to do the ransomware. You know, Matthew from One Who Serves, who's our contractor, they're constantly updating software as protections. An additional protection that we've done that I think is helpful, it's not foolproof, but we really think tries to help add additional layer, is we've got trainings
Yeah, I've
that
seen
all
them.
employees
Yeah.
have to take. And it basically, it's a email that goes out, and it teaches you about, making you aware about phishing, and they got different terms in there for emails, texts, a phone call, someone trying to come into the building. Someone coming to the building is most unlikely because they'd have to get in the building and see someone's computer to get a password in. We're not that big of an organization,
Yeah.
but to be vigilant, to know what's fake, what's not, what to do if you suspect it. So we're hoping that additional layer of safety protocols helps. And, you know, I don't know if maybe, and I'm not saying Hendersonville wasn't doing all the things they think they needed to do, but maybe they didn't have that type of training going on too. That's typically, they say, a lot of times where that comes in, is it comes in through an email or text or someone in the organization, not intentionally, but
Yeah, it happens.
innocently, and then it gets in, but I haven't heard exactly, I saw
Yeah, I think
CMA
they're
or somewhere, I
investigating it
meant
too,
to ask,
still,
but,
yeah.
Is
You have a
our-
comment?
Yes, sir. Is our data backed up daily? So that if
Yes.
someone were to try
It-
and hold our
it
data
is.
ransom, then we'd just be like, okay, well,
It is,
okay,
yeah.
that's perfect.
I want to say it's every 15 minutes or hourly, or
Yeah.
it's.
Oh, wow.
Because if you
Yeah,
got it
we
all
have a-
backed up, I mean, it's a moot point.
Yep, we have a backup and recovery, and it goes off to another site, and yes.
And do you or Matthew get a report on if there's any questionable sites that are trying to get in?
He probably does. I haven't seen that. I mean, there's always
Oh, I know.
questionable sites trying to get in. And they've got filters, you know, so, you know, you can't going out to like websites and try and block things like that.
No, it sounds like Matthew does a pretty good job of staying on top of it, better than we would do if we were trying to do this ourselves.
He does, but it is like a constant
Oh, yeah.
between IT professionals who know how to develop software or safety protocols to block this, and that's something they have to continue to do and like think like the bad guys or try and be a step ahead. And then the other thing is employees we've got to be careful about, you know, when you click on an email or someone's asking for something, that you're not giving them something that, you know, gives that, bad
Do it.
character an opportunity to get in. So,
I keep getting a fake one that tells me training is overdue. I know that's spam.
We do get the training, though, in our staff email. I do the training.
Thanks, I got cracked up.
That actually might be the trainings. I do the trainings.
you're part of this team.
Yeah, I do the trainings. I think one of them, I was like a year late, but I did it.
And they're a pain
I
to
got
do,
the-
and some of
got
the
the evil eye.
tests are hard, or a little challenging, but if you not pay attention there while you're in the training, so, it is good information. It is, I mean, some of
Yeah,
it,
it
you're
is
like,
pretty good.
oh, like, who would do that, or duh, but, some of it, it gets pretty sly on
Yeah.
these things, but
It
it's,
get worse with AI.
Oh,
maybe,
absolutely.
yeah.
That's what scares me.
All righty, any other business from council? All righty, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
We have a motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to adjourn, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, we are adjourned. And Bob, one more time, thank you.
yeah, thank you, Bob.